These we will take in memory of our friend, he cried. But as for your terms, we reject them utterly. Get you gone, for your embassy is over and death is near to you. We did not come here to waste words in treating with Sauron, faithless and accursed, still less with one of his slaves. Be gone.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards radio program. Today we are reading Book 5, Chapter 10 of The Return of the King. The Black Gate opens. My name is Zach.
My name is Logan.
Another banger, man. This chapter rules.
It does. I mean, as much as sometimes we complain about chapters where it's just talking or something, Tolkien can really make a conversation very exciting, you know? When we get just a couple pages of like battle in this chapter, but the back and forth, especially in front of the Black Gate, is so epic and it's awesome. And I love that this is our sort of like the point where we leave off. It gives us kind of great momentum into the next book.
Yeah. It's I think anybody but Tolkien would probably just be like, and then they were at the Black Gate.
Yeah, but we get the whole 5 days.
A whole 5 days of marching. And, there's the sort of proclamation of Aragorn's reign happens here. And
yeah, it's interesting.
They're moving through territory that we've already seen. Like we go through the area where Faramir interacts with Frodo and Sam for the first time when he's, going against the Oliphants. We get the road that Frodo and Sam go to reach the Black Gate for the first time is mentioned. He has such a clear image of the geography that they're moving through.
Right. Yeah.
We even get like the sort of like repair of the head of the king that was toppled.
I love that part, that they take the time to like, and it's sort of part of the bait, I think, that Sauron's supposed to be taking, that, Aragorn is on the march as king, claiming his territory. And that's supposed to be kind of enticing, I think, to Sauron. They're not being sneaky really at all about their passage through this country.
Yeah, they're literally arriving with trumpets.
Yeah. Like every so often they stop and blow trumpets and
make a proclamation of who's coming through. The stopping and cleaning and reassembling the head of the king, that we really get a beautiful short section when Frodo and Sam are passing that way, where Sam looks and sees the head of the king on the ground, and it's got a corona of flowers, and he says, look, Mr. Frodo, the king has a crown again. And it's this small moment of hope that those two characters have as they're making their way, into this evil land. And seeing Aragorn take the time. I mean, I was listening to this in the audiobook, and I had to pause because my mind was wandering for a while, like, and I wasn't paying attention to what was actually being said, because I was wondering to myself, like, how did they do it?
like lift it up.
Yeah, are they just getting like 20 guys around being like heave ho, or like, do they have winches? Like,
yeah, ropes over tree branches or something, maybe.
Yeah, how are they? And then once they get it up there, how are they like fastening it to the body? All those like practical questions are probably beside the point, but it wouldn't be easy to do.
No.
So they're not just moving like as fast as they possibly can. They're taking their time. They do have one skirmish that it seems like they handle pretty well, and like without loss, because no casualties are mentioned. But for the most part, they're moving unopposed through this land, and they're struck by the emptiness of it. And that one battle they have, it seems like Aragorn says, oh, it was a feint to entice us to move forward, and to give us a false sense of security as we approach the gate. The first few pages of this chapter are laying out the logistics of how they arrive at the Black Gate.
Mm-hmm.
The real meat is their parlay with the mouth of Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's where we'll spend most of our time. But I do think it's notable that 1,000 men leave the march before they arrive at the gate.
Yeah.
Because they're so terrified of the land of Mordor.
Yeah.
And Aragorn is gracious in his response to them and lets them leave in a way that doesn't dishonor them.
Yep.
He gives them a task so that they could still maintain their honor.
These are mostly men from Rohan, from Westfold, far away, or husbandmen from the Lossarnoch. And to them, Mordor had been a childhood name of evil and yet unreal, a legend that had no part in their simple life. And they sort of jump at the chance. Some of them are ashamed, but others of them jump at the chance of, it says, hearing of a manful deed within their measure.
Yeah.
And so for Aragorn to have an understanding of who he's, commanding, and knowing that there's a task out there that's necessary, it's not just like a busy work.
Yeah, he tells them to retake Caer Andros, which we talked about a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
It's like a little island, like it's like a river crossing, like a natural river crossing in the north.
But a strategic position, right? And to give them it's like true grace, like to give somebody cover for their shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says a lot about Aragorn as a leader, how he sees the forces that are, there to fight for him, as the king, and his ability to see what their needs are and how their skills match the needs at hand. That's what a leader is.
And they really are like truly anticipating being completely demolished by Sauron's forces. And so giving, a seventh of the force permission to leave, like 7,000 people following behind the plans of, 5 or 6 leaders who made the decision for them. Not everybody who's marching could have like a full picture of what they're trying to do. Like Gandalf's not starting the march by being like, hey, everybody gather around. So there's this ring. Okay.
Right.
And it's a magic ring, and Sauron, who you all know, the nameless one, he is actually a lieutenant of Morgoth, who also is a Dark Lord. I know that's confusing. There's 2. One was from a long time ago. He was actually like much scarier than Sauron, but that's really beside the point. He poured all of his malice and desire to control all of Middle Earth into a magical ring, which ironically was found by a hobbit. We're not going to get into that, but long story short, we have a 3-foot tall hobbit who is walking with his servant blindly into Mordor. Denethor thought it was a fool's errand. Oh, by the way, Denethor killed himself just like 5 minutes ago. And so now we are on a suicide march to, he's not, like, people don't know. They have to believe like we're making an earnest march on Mordor. So allowing people to leave, I think, is, you use the word grace. I think that's a good way to put it. But it's like, if we die and the mission fails, they're going to die at a later time anyway. And all they really need is to have enough men to make it seem like an earnest march. And 6,000, it's just as foolish to march with 6,000 as it is 7. And so I think that it's a testament to a king who truly loves his people, which is a stark contrast to Sauron, who
loves nothing and no one. He doesn't have subjects, he has slaves. Sauron only sees the people around him as like utility, in their
yeah,
utility, you know.
yeah,
But Aragorn sees all of his men, even as a mass of men, as, you know, people. If he can save face for them, help them save face, you know, in the teeth of this, you know, calamity of Morgoth, he will. Yeah, and regarding, you know, Tolkien's biography, we have Merry who has to stay behind. We begin the chapter with Merry who has to stay behind because he's too unwell to leave, which was the same position Tolkien was in. His friends, you know, died while he was in the hospital.
yeah, with
And
trench fever. Yeah.
after he returned to England, most of the battalion that he was a part of was wiped out.
Oh, I don't know if I'd ever read that. That's
Yeah, and so you know, you kind of imagine him sitting in the hospital
yeah,
with this view of this like faraway conflict that he was a part of. He grudgingly kind of signed up to go,
yeah.
and even then, you know, felt kind of torn, but then also certainly I think most soldiers, most people who serve in the military in some capacity look at the upper brass and the politicians who make decisions about their lives with a fair amount of not cynicism, but skepticism and a pretty clear-eyed view about, you know, what it actually means to be like a, you know, peon in an enormous bureaucracy. For Aragorn to have that kind of humane, non-bureaucratic decision making is it, 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 it you know, you can't help but make the connection there.
Well, speaking of Merry being left behind,
Yeah.
let's jump into the chapter. It says 2 days later, the army of the West was all assembled on the Pelennor. The host of orcs and Easterlings had turned back out of Anorion, but harried and scattered by the Rohirrim, they had broken and fled with little fighting towards Cair-Andros. And with that threat destroyed and the new strength arriving out of the south, the city was as well manned as might be. All now is ready for the last throw.
It says that Merry, to his shame, would not go with them. Aragorn says, "You are not fit for such a journey. But don't be ashamed. If you do no more in the war, you've already earned great honor. Peregrine shall go and represent the Shire folk." I think it's so strange the way this. I mean, I guess it's just sort of, you know, romantic. You know, he says, you know, if we fail, the black tide of Mordor is going to sweep over everything. So you'll have your moment.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Bye,
Yeah. See you later."
farewell." It doesn't make Merry feel any better. I mean, it wouldn't. But he and Beargill just stand and kind of have to watch, you know, this force leave. And of course, Beargill's father, Beargond, goes as well because he can't stay and be part of the guard.
Yeah. By saving Faramir, and, killing the men who stood against him, he still has to be judged for what he did. And they haven't had time yet. It's only been 2 days.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how Aragorn, he has to give Merry a framework for why it's okay that he's not going. And obviously Merry doesn't want to be separated from Pippin, but there's this sense in this chapter, almost like in the Council of Elrond, like when the company is being chosen, that there's going to be a representative from each race of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And when they parlay with the Mouth of Sauron in a minute, they choose their parlay based on, having one representative from each race as well. And so Pippin, he's allowed to go, but Merry almost has to be comforted by saying, "Hey, you've already done a great deed." And like, this is Pippin's way of almost being able to match what you've already done.
Yeah. Right.
He says, "For though he has done as well as his fortune allowed him, he has yet to match your deed." And so this is like Pippin's chance to represent the Shire folk in the way that Merry already has. As Merry watches them leave, it can be assumed that he's asked to go because Aragorn is telling him that he can't. It says, as if recalled by his mood of despair, the pain in his arm returned, and he felt weak and old, and the sunlight seemed thin. He was roused by the touch of Beargill's hand, so Beargill says, come, Master Parian. You are still in pain, I see. I will help you back to the healers, but do not fear. They will come back. The men of Minas Tirith will never be overcome, and now they have the Lord Elfstone and Beregond of the Guard too.
Yeah, I love that he sees the king and his dad basically on the same level.
Yeah.
It's so great.
So by noon, they get to Osgiliath. So it takes a while for them even to make it to this river crossing. It says, there all the workers and the craftsmen that could be spared were busy. Some were strengthening the ferries and boat bridges that the enemy had made, and in part destroyed when they fled. Some gathered stores and booty, and others on the eastern side across the river were throwing up hasty works of defense. So as they're moving along, like you don't just move 7,000 men across a river. You have to think about the ways that they could actually make this crossing.
I also think it's that detail there is interesting. There are workers and craftsmen among the men. These are not professional soldiers necessarily.
Yeah.
Right? It's just all the men who they could supply from who are sort of fighting age.
Yeah.
And in the condition to do this. Some of them happen to be workers and craftsmen who know how to build a bridge or ford a river or, hoist the head of a king up on the shoulders of a statue. I don't know. When I think about it, when you think about it that way, I think, 1,000 guys going off because they're overcome by fear it's not surprising. It's pretty natural, actually.
They don't encounter any enemies in this early stage, but there is like a sense of foreboding in the land. It says, no sign of an enemy had they seen, no cry or call had been heard, yet ever as they went forward, they felt the watchfulness of the land increase. Tree and stone, blade and leaf were listening. So even though they don't see enemies, there's a watchfulness, there's a sense of danger. This land is still haunted. And like we find out explicitly later that the Nazgul are periodically flying over.
Yeah, to watch.
Here's the first announcement of the coming of Gondor. They're not quite calling him King Elisar yet, but it says, then Aragorn set trumpeters at each of the 4 roads that ran into the ring of trees, and they blew a great fanfare, and the heralds cried aloud, the lords of Gondor have returned, and all this land that is theirs they take back.
Yeah, and right after that, it says the hideous orc head, was cast down, and the old king's head was raised, still crowned with white and golden flowers. So that's pretty symbolic,
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't caught that the corona is still set on the king's head. They don't remove that.
It's a nice connection to Frodo and Sam, and the idea that the flowers remain on the head is, they notice the same thing that Sam noticed. They're just kind of united in that.
Recognizing that beauty.
Yeah, the beauty of that.
This is an interesting section here. It says, now in their debate, some had counseled that Minas Morgul should be first assailed, and if they might take it, it should be utterly destroyed. And maybe, said Imrahil, the road that leads thence to the pass above will prove an easier way of assault upon the Dark Lord than this northern gate. So they're like debating whether they attack Minas Morgul.
Yeah.
And Imrahil correctly is like, maybe that's a better way to slip into Mordor, which is exactly what Frodo and Sam do. But it says that Gandalf speaks against this urgently because of the evil that dwelt in the valley, where the minds of living men would turn to madness and horror, and because also of the news that Faramir had brought. It says, "For if the ring bearer had indeed attempted that way, then above all, they should not draw the eye of Mordor thither." So it's like they're not even going to take a chance of putting Frodo in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
But it's kind of against the point. He's like, we're not actually trying to attempt a like successful incursion into Mordor here.
Yeah.
But they're at this crossroads, and I mean, this is a literal crossing of roads.
Yeah.
They decide that they have to make some sort of defense at the crossroads. It says, if Mordor should send a force over the Morgul Pass or should bring more men up from the south, they have to be prepared that they won't be stuck in between a hammer and an anvil. It says, for that guard, they chose mostly archers who knew the ways of Ithilien and would lie hid in the woods and slopes about the meeting of the ways. But Gandalf and Aragorn rode with the vanguard to the entrance of Morgul Vale and looked on the evil city.
They kind of leave the like merry men, Robin Hood's merry men.
Yeah.
In the trees. It's, you kind of imagine it being like Faramir's guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, well, you guys know this land. Why don't you stay here? Just blend in with the trees and watch the pass here. And I don't think I ever noticed this next detail before this read, which is that they go and look at the evil city, as you just said.
Yeah.
It's dark and lifeless, and everyone had left because they had been destroyed in battle, and the Nazgul were abroad.
Yeah.
But then it says, then they broke the evil bridge and set red flames in the noisome fields and departed.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, they destroy the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like set the fields on fire.
Yeah.
And I had never noticed that before.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. But I think it's interesting because it's just stuff that's going to get Sauron's attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's symbolic. It's, we're going to repair the statue of the king. We're going to destroy the bridge. We're going to set the fields on fire. And then we're going to leave.
All this takes so much time.
Yeah. But it's also kind of provocative, performative,
Yeah.
And it all plays into that kind of that assumption of like, how would somebody with the ring act? And they have to play on that sense of how does Sauron see this situation?
The sense of scale, I think like I didn't really have a sense of the scale of this really maybe until this reading of this chapter. But it says, the day after, being the third day since they set out from Minas Tirith, the army began its northward march along the road. It was some 100 miles by that way from the crossroads to the Morannon. What might befall them before they came so far, none knew. So
this is the part where they keep blowing the trumpets. The lords of Gondor are come. Let all leave this land or yield them up. But Imrahil said, say not the lords of Gondor, say the king Elessar. Well, that's true, even though he hasn't yet sat upon the throne. And that's because it's more provocative to say that it's Aragorn.
It will give the enemy more thought.
Yeah. But none answered the challenge. But I still think, even though they're not being answered, they're going to be answered. And the watchfulness of the land and things like that, I think,
it'll get back to Sauron. Yeah.
Yeah. We know that all this is getting back to Sauron.
And it says, though they marched in seeming peace, the hearts of all the army, from the highest to the lowest, were downcast. And with every mile that they went north, foreboding of evil grew heavier on them. So this is where they have their small battle. It says 2 days after they left the crossroads, there was a strong force of orcs and Easterlings who attempted to take their leading companies in an ambush. And then Tolkien gives this little like zoom out that says, and that was the very place where Faramir had waylaid the men of Harad, and the road went in a deep cutting through an outthrust of the eastward hills. So this is the place where Sam sees the Oliphants.
This is where Sam makes hot dog soup.
This is for hot dog water. This is of herbs and stewed rabbit.
Yeah, that's right.
It says, but the captains of the West were well warned by their scouts, skilled men from the Henneth Anun, led by Mablung, and so the ambush was itself trapped. For the horsemen went wide about westward and came up to the flank of the enemy from behind, and they were destroyed or driven east into the hills.
So it's recognized pretty quickly that, this was not like a real attempt by the forces of Mordor to really waylay them. It's more of a feint to kind of draw them forward, and to maybe put them in a false sense of security, as if, we defeated this force easily, we're going to defeat the next force easily too. So it's just tactics.
Sauron is still assuming that Aragorn has the ring and is going to take this as a sign of his mastery.
Right.
That Aragorn's going to get inflated by this victory and make him easier to defeat once he gets to the gate.
Well, it's interesting that Sauron does not fear the ring, really, in the hands of another person. I think because he understands the true nature of the ring, because it's his nature, right? That it may give you that power of command, but it's not exactly. I don't know. It doesn't increase the numbers of your force or anything like that.
Exactly.
And he knows that he outnumbers this force, by 10 times or whatever. So
yeah. And it says, and from that evening onward, the Nazgul came and followed every move of the army. And they fly above the sight of anybody except for Legolas. It says, and yet their presence could be felt as a deepening of shadow and a dimming of the sun. And though the ringwraiths did not yet stoop low upon their foes and were silent, uttering no cry, the dread of them could not be shaken off.
Yeah. When those guys are around, it just feels bad.
And that's when, so this is when the men from far off lands who Mordor is just a, fairy tale told to them from the time they were little. This is when they begin to despair. And I think it's connected to the watchfulness of the land and the growing despair of the land, but it's also because the Nazgul are infecting everyone with despair.
Yep. That's a really good point. I think this sentence is interesting. So desolate were those places, and so deep the horror that lay on them, that some of the host were unmanned. I sort of read that and I'm like, these guys were like pooping their pants.
Yeah, but these are like, the riders of Rohan.
But that phrase, that word unmanned,
yeah,
it's like a nice way to say not a nice way, but it's a more elegant way to say these guys couldn't keep it together. They were panicked. I mean, so panicked that they couldn't keep walking.
Yeah, it says they could neither walk nor ride further north.
Right. Couldn't even stay on their horses. And some of those riders of Rohan kind of are professional soldiers, right?
Yeah.
Like to be from Rohan is to live a life of sort of like a step, like the Huns or Genghis Khan or whatever, like where you can mobilize an entire culture to war, which is not true, right, of most cultures. So these guys kind of live on horses. They're up for long marches. They're up for battles on horseback and stuff, but not when there's Nazgul hanging around.
Yeah,
and not against the forces of, this spiritual wickedness of Mordor is of infecting them.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the word unmanned because just a couple of paragraphs later when Aragorn gives them a honorable way out of the march, it says, then some being shamed by his mercy overcame their fear and went on. So some are so inspired by his willingness to allow them to leave that they decide to stay.
Yeah.
Like he wins their hearts.
Yeah, I missed that. That's interesting.
And then it says, and others took new hope, hearing of a manful deed within their measure that they could turn to.
Mm-hmm.
So those who were unmanned, unable to continue on are given a manful deed, and that gives them pride.
Sort of returns them to themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
unmanned, and then they're given a manful deed, and
Right.
it heartens them. And now this section of the chapter is over. And so, since many men had already been left at the crossroads, it was with less than 6,000 that the captains of the West came at last to challenge the Black Gate in the might of Mordor. So I guess part of the 1,000 that they lost were planned. So I guess I misspoke when I said that 1,000 left at this moment, because they'd already left the, archers at the
Oh, yeah.
crossroads.
Yeah. Right.
It grows cold as they're on their, last night before the battle. And it says, north amid their noisome pits lay the first of the great heaps and hills of slag and broken rock and blasted earth, the vomit of the maggot folk of Mordor. I made a note to talk about this. I may cut this.
You're gonna disparage the name of Farmer Maggot, aren't you?
Yes.
You son of a how dare you?
Why did Tolkien name a kindly farmer I don't know, kindly may not be the right word to use for a farmer maggot, but
He's mostly
farmer
kindly.
maggot?
It doesn't make sense that you would write the whole book
Yes.
and then go back and read it all and then read it again and think I should keep the name Farmer Maggot. It doesn't make sense at all.
It is a strange thing. I mean, we talked about it. I need to go back, and this is over a year ago, so I cannot remember exactly our conversation, but I remember us thinking, and this may have actually been cut out of the episode, I can't remember. I remember us thinking, well, maybe maggot is never used in a negative way in Lord of the Rings.
No, it's not.
But then I just did a simple word search, and the first thing that comes up is the maggot folk of Mordor and their vomit. It's just such a strange decision to make.
My gut feeling is that somehow there is some etymology sort of inside joke that Tolkien just thought it was funny that the guy's name is Maggot, because sometimes there's two words in two different languages that sound the same but don't have any, they have no connection to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His name is Farmer Maggot. Sometimes crazy things happen with language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the sense I have, is that Tolkien just thought it was funny.
Right. You got to be
He
right.
must have just thought it was funny.
Yeah, you got to be right. I remember you saying at the time, okay, but we're supposed to think that this is a terrifying dog wielding.
It's the scariest thing that happens in that part of the book.
Frodo has him as this villainous creature, and so maggot is supposed to have this sense of foreboding to it. And then the twist is that we meet him, and he's actually a really solid guy who makes really good beer. And Sam never fully trusts him, but he gives them mushrooms, and
his wife is this beautiful, nice person, and they get a ride from him, and
exactly. It's just so strange that he would keep the name Farmer Maggot.
I think Tolkien just thought it was hilarious. It's got to be it. It's got to be it. It's got to be.
The other thing that you said, I'm remembering this conversation now. The other thing that you said was that he must have just liked the sound of the word.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great sounding word. Vomit of the maggot folk is so fun to say.
Yeah, but why give it to the kindly farmer? I'm still stuck on that.
It's weird. It's definitely weird. Yeah.
It says the two vast iron doors of the Black Gate under its frowning arch were fast closed. Upon the battlement nothing could be seen. All was silent, but watchful. They were come to the last end of their folly, and stood forlorn and chill in the gray light of early day before towers and walls which their army could not assault with hope, not even if they had brought thither engines of great power, and the enemy had no more force than would suffice for the manning of the gate and wall alone.
Yeah. I mean, he's just underscoring what a sort of foolish, throw
it's
the
an
dice
impossible
this is.
task.
Yep.
Only the task Sauron thinks that somebody would do if they're crazed with
ring power. Yeah.
Exactly.
This part's scary where he describes that as they stood there, they all saw the Nazgul gathered together, hovering above the towers of the teeth like vultures. So they're like wheeling, over the gate.
Yeah, because they're about to die. I mean, using like a vultures is a intentional choice.
It's like they're already carrying,
Exactly.
And it says no choice was left them but to play their part to its end.
Yeah. So Aragorn arrays his host as best as it can be contrived to prepare for battle. And he puts together captains as representatives from each of the races, as we mentioned earlier. Says, there was Gandalf as chief herald, and Aragorn with the sons of Elrond, and Eomer of Rohan, and Imrahil, and Legolas and Gimli, and Peregrine were bidden to go also, so that all the enemies of Mordor should have a witness. So they're witnesses to this parlay.
Yeah.
So it's almost got like a legal proceeding to it, so that they can report back to their peoples what they saw,
what the agreements were, and
And this is kind of the last announcement that they make before the battle. Come forth, let the Lord of the Black Land come forth. Justice shall be done upon him, for wrongfully he has made war upon Gondor and wrested its lands. Therefore, the king of Gondor demands that he should atone for his evils and depart then forever. Come forth.
Just as they're about to leave, because there's not really an answer, it says that Sauron had already laid his plans, and he had a mind first to play these mice cruelly before he struck to kill. And that's when the Black Gate opens and an embassy from the Dark Tower emerges.
So I imagine the cruelty that he's talking about there is the fact that he wants to show them the mithril coat and the elven cloak and the sword before he kills them.
Yeah.
That's Sauron's evil torture before the kill. Like, Sauron has no doubt that he's going to crush them.
Right.
But he wants to get in one final insult to Aragorn and Gandalf before he does.
Yeah, exactly.
It says, and thereupon the door of the Black Gate was thrown open with a great clang, and out of it there came an embassy from the Dark Tower. The description in the mouth of Sauron is fascinating.
Yeah, it's riding like a demon horse with burning flames in its eyes and nostrils.
With a head more like a skull than a living head.
This is about as like kind of gothic and heavy metal as Lord of the Rings gets.
Yeah.
But you can see like the seeds of all that artwork on rock and roll albums for like decades is all here. And then the description of, the mouth of Sauron, it says the lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr.
Yeah.
Is fascinating in its description of a man, right? This is a person.
Yeah.
It's not a ring wraith.
No.
It's not some kind of monster.
Yeah.
He
has a body.
He has a body, and he has been, he has given himself kind of willfully over to the worship and enthrallment of Sauron.
And it says that he's a black Numenorian. So, I mean, that means he's like ancient.
Yeah, he's part of like a group that sort of gave itself over to Middle-earth during Sauron's domination. It says that they worshipped him. They were enamored of evil knowledge, and that he's like some kind of great sorcerer. So he also has magic that he's learned at the feet of Sauron.
So let's just like look at how he's described. It says, At his head there rode a tall and evil shape mounted upon a black horse. So he's tall. It says the rider was robed all in black, and black was his lofty helm. But Tolkien makes sure to say, as you mentioned before, that he's not a ring wraith. He's a living man, so he has a body. And it says, the lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr he was, and his name is remembered in no tale, for he himself had forgotten it.
That's scary. Somebody who doesn't remember their own name.
He says, I am the mouth of Sauron. So he is a slave. Like, there's no identity to this person apart from his willingness to do his Lord's will.
It says here that he entered the service of the Dark Tower when it first arose again.
Yeah.
I think there's something about it's sort of similar to Sauron. I kind of like found myself laughing at Sauron.
Yeah.
That he thought he could have like some place. You know what I mean? In Sauron's, I don't know, company or whatever. It's like, right. Sauron has what he needs. He doesn't need Sauron to like serve him.
No.
And then we get to the fact that, you know, this guy is going to be installed at Orthanc.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is probably the plan from the beginning, right? So like this idea that Sauron thought that he was going to, you know, retain his place at Orthanc is like just laughable.
Ludicrous, yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah, it says he entered the service of the Dark Tower when it first rose again. And it says, because of his cunning, you know, cunning is, I think you're so spot on comparing him to Sauron, because cunning is a word that's used to describe Sauron in his mind. It says, because of his cunning, he grew ever higher in the Lord's favor, and he learned great sorcery and knew much of the mind of Sauron. And he was more cruel than any orc.
That's like the greatest description of him, that it makes the orc look, or the orcs look, you know, humane by comparison.
Yeah. So he rides up with a small number of black-horsed soldiers bearing the black banner with the evil red eye. And he halts a few paces before the captains of the West, looks at them, and laughs.
Is there anyone in this rout with authority to treat with me? So like, I love that description of like this attacking force. It's not going to be routed. It is a rout.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it is itself a defeat.
And it says, or indeed with wit to understand me. And the way that he speaks in this like archaic language. Yeah. There's lots of thous and, you know, didst and
very heightened. Yeah.
It's a heightened, like kind of archaic language. And he looks down with scorn at Aragorn and says, not thou at least.
I actually kind of imagine him speaking with like a snooty British accent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like how it's like,
you know?
Yeah. That's how it's written for sure.
I mean, he's so patronizing, you know, to Aragorn and Gandalf. And it really just makes you hate this guy because we love Aragorn and Gandalf so much.
It needs more to make a king than a piece of Elvis glass or a rabble such as this. You know, I think it's interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that Aragorn says anything in this exchange at all. This entire parlay. I think Gandalf is the one who speaks.
Right.
So, like, Aragorn's response is silence. He just looks in the mouth of Sauron's eye and holds his gaze. And it says, and for a moment they strove thus. But soon, though Aragorn did not stir nor move hand to weapon, the other quailed and gave back as if menaced with a blow. I am a herald and an ambassador and may not be assailed, he cried. So he's a coward.
Yeah, so I just think it's interesting here. Aragorn gives the sort of same silence that Sauron gives in this moment.
He sends someone else to speak for him.
as the king of Gondor, Gandalf is going to speak for him. And as the whatever Sauron, thinks of himself as the king of the world, he sends the mouth of Sauron to speak for him.
Yeah, Gandalf is even described as the chief herald.
Yeah. And so there's something kind of, there's some power in not speaking and having other people kind of do your bidding. And maybe that's at play here. But I also think the kind of, we get a little glimpse of like the spiritual power of Aragorn and and like almost scorn, like an unwillingness to even talk to this thing.
It's like, yeah, I don't recognize your authority.
I'm not going to lower myself to have a conversation with you, So Gandalf will do the speaking for me. But I love Gandalf's reply here to, the mouth's whining about
saying he won't be assailed.
I may not be assailed. He says, where such laws hold, it is also custom for ambassadors to use less insolence.
Yeah.
So, if you want to be polite, let's be polite. But if you're not going to be polite, then, neither will we.
Yeah.
And also the laws are kind of out the window here.
Like let's be real.
Like we're not two kingdoms having a negotiation. Like you are like usurpers and forces like in the thrall of like Satan's lieutenant. And
exactly.
Like we're not here to have a negotiation. So anyway, yeah.
He says, but no one has threatened you. So he's like, quit being a freaking wimp.
Yeah, what are you whining about? Like, relax.
You have not to fear from us until your errand is done. But unless your master has come to new wisdom, then with all his servants, you will be in great peril.
It's great.
So he's like, oh no, we're not going to hurt you yet.
Now. Right, exactly. So, said the messenger, then thou art the spokesman, old graybeard. That's how I imagine him talking. Oh.
Then thou art the spokesman. Yeah, so there's that archaic language again. An old graybeard. So he's like calling him, he's making fun of him being old. And then he goes, have we not heard of thee at whiles and of thy wanderings, ever hatching plots and mischief at a safe distance? So, I mean, like, that's like, him putting together dwarves and a burglar to, take over the Lonely Mountain. He's like, yeah, we've heard about your scheming, old man. He goes, but this time thou hast stuck out thy nose too far, Master Gandalf, and thou shalt see what comes to him who sets his foolish webs before the feet of Sauron the Great. I think it's funny. I circled nose, like he's making fun of Gandalf's big schnoz.
Big schnoz, yeah.
He says, I have tokens I was bidden to show to thee in especial, ESPECIAL, if thou shouldst dare to come. And he signals to one of his guards to bring forth the bundle.
And of course, what he shows them is the short sword that Sam had carried and a gray cloak with an elven brooch. And last, the coat of mithril mail that Frodo had worn. And then I didn't notice this until this reading, but the mithril mail is wrapped in Frodo's tattered garments. And it seems to me that the mithril mail, right, is striking.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, even more devastating that they have his clothes.
Right. And we won't, until the next book, we won't find out that, like when Frodo was taken by the orc company, he's stripped completely naked. And that's why Frodo assumes that the ring has been taken when he wakes up.
Yeah.
But we don't know this yet. If we're reading this for the first time.
Yeah, it's important to note that, I think, that we have no idea. I mean, the last thing we know about Frodo and Sam is Sam knocked himself out by running into a door.
Knocked himself out cold.
Yeah.
I'm coming, Mr. Frodo. But it's interesting that it's a mixture of Frodo's possessions and Sam's possessions.
Yeah.
And those who are there, like they can make a few assumptions about this. One is that probably both of them are dead and they've taken all their possessions. But from here on out, the mouth of Sauron refers to a singular spy,
Exactly. Yep.
but that has to be a signal to them at least that they don't know the full picture. They have these things, but they don't know necessarily that they belong to two hobbits. They're
Yeah.
referred to as a single spy.
My question here is, if Sauron had the ring, does Sauron come to this meeting?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Does he
I kind
bother?
of I kind of think he does.
Yeah.
I think Sauron comes in person to the meeting. He doesn't just send his guy out because if he had the ring, he would come out and he would boast about the ring. He'd be like, why are you even here? You know? And yeah, he would show maybe he would, have Frodo and Sam's bodies or something, if he had the ring to like show these guys, right? I mean, when they were attacking Gondor, they were flinging heads over the walls, right? Like that's the kind of thing that Sauron is up for. And so I just wonder if in Gandalf's mind, if he's like, if Sauron had the ring, he would be here and he's not. And that tells him something.
Is actually a good sign.
It's a good sign that he's not here. And it's a good sign that it's this mixed stuff. It's Frodo's stuff, but like, where's Sting? And yeah, then the singular reference to a spy.
Yeah.
It has to be encouraging to them too. And frankly, like they are in a position where they have to cling to those kinds of hope anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they would, right? Because they have to.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting, like kind of the interplay of this kind of complex, like parrying back and forth verbally.
Yeah.
And like with these, like, symbols that everybody knows so well, being connected to Frodo and Sam. Pippin, of course, like this is all beyond Pippin's like ability to piece together. And so he just cries out in despair. And Gandalf sternly tells him silence and thrusts him back. But the messenger laughs again now, so he kind of lost he begins with a laugh. He's like literally looking down on these people, saying that they're rabble. And then his confidence is quailed and, he gives the, don't assail me. He's like the cowardly lion. Now he's got his laughter back, his scorn. He says, so you have yet another of these imps with you. So here again, this like indicates that he's thinking that there's a singular hobbit there. So he's like,
Right.
oh, you got another one of these. He goes, what use you find in them, I cannot guess. But to send them as spies into Mordor is beyond even your accustomed folly. Still, I thank him, for it is plain that this brat at least has seen these tokens before, and it would be vain for you to deny them now. That line, what use you find in them, I cannot guess. Like, they cannot understand people apart from their utility
exactly.
to them as objects. What use you have for them is beyond me.
Yep.
And that's what separates Gandalf from Sauron.
Yeah, and Saruman, we talked about that with all the way back with Radagast.
100%.
Right, where Gandalf sees Radagast's gifts and uses those gifts, and he ends up saving himself in that way.
Yes.
And Saruman sends Radagast on a mission that he cannot complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here, Saruman has, crafted himself or shaped himself or whatever in the image of Sauron.
Yeah.
And you're so right. I mean, that word use, it comes up at least a couple times in this chapter. He sees the hobbits as, what does he say? He describes Frodo as a spy from the little rat land of the Shire. God, it's just disgusting.
He says, "Nay, do not start. We know it well. Here are the marks of a conspiracy: dwarf coat, elf cloak, blade of the downfallen west, and a spy from the little rat land of the Shire."
Ugh.
But again, he's like betraying his ignorance, because he says, "Now maybe he that wore these things was a creature that you could not grieve to lose, and maybe otherwise one dear to you, perhaps. If so, take swift counsel with what little wit is left you. For Sauron does not love spies, and what his fate shall be depends now on your choice." And so I guess you could read that one of several ways. They already think of the hobbits as like rats, or like, you know, useless objects, not people. So maybe he's not mentioning Sam because he's like, I'm only going to talk about the one that was clearly the master and not the servant. Like, I'm not even going to mention him. But I think he betrays that he doesn't actually know where these things come from, because he says he who wore these things, and it's like a mix of Frodo and Sam's things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that for Gandalf, it's got to be immediately apparent. I mean, he's Gandalf, you know. I think he's just that's my reading of it. Maybe that's a hopeful, whatever, rose-eyed glasses read of it, but I just think Gandalf sees straight through it.
The mouth of Sauron sees the fear and horror in their eyes, and he laughs a third time now. It says, "For it seemed to him that his sport went well." Good, good, he said. He was dear to you, I see. Or else his errand was one that you did not wish to fail. It has. And now he shall endure the slow torment of years, as long and slow as our arts and the great tower can contrive, and never be released, unless maybe when he is changed and broken, so that he may come to you, and you shall see what you have done. This shall surely be, unless you accept my lord's terms.
The thing about this, I mean, this is terrifying, right, and horrible, and you do imagine Aragorn and Gandalf and the rest of them standing there, horrified that Frodo's being tortured at that moment at the hands of Sauron or Sauron's whatever, minions. But it also means Frodo isn't dead. Like,
Yeah, he's showing his hand again.
can they not take hope in this to say, like, if there's some possibility for us to either get in there, right, or for something to happen, for some ray of hope to show itself when we least expect it.
Yeah.
Frodo's alive. Frodo's not dead. He's in the hands of the enemy, and that's terrible, but there's a seed of hope in that.
Yeah, it's still there.
and boasting about it is, again, it's that, evil undoing itself thing. Boasting about it is Sauron showing his ass, frankly.
Yeah.
As terrible as terrible as it is, it's not like some nice thing to have heard, but still.
Gandalf says, "Name the terms." This always strikes me every time I read this. Gandalf doesn't say, like, "Screw you, like, let's fight." He at least feigns listening to what the mouth of Sauron has to say. Do you think that even if the terms were remotely as, like, unacceptable as they are, like, do you think that Gandalf is hoping for Frodo to be returned to them?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's kind of a play for time or something. I don't know.
The fact that he says name the terms, I mean, that shows that he loves Frodo.
I suppose. Yeah, I could see that reading. I think.
What do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? Maybe we could give it to you. I could see that. Yeah.
It's just so emotionally complex. Name the terms.
I mean, I guess I would look at the text here again. Those nearby saw the anguish in his face, and now he seemed an old and wizened man. Again, there's that word wizened, wizard. Crushed, defeated at last. And they did not doubt that he would accept.
That reminded me of the parlay with Sauron when there's like kind of this like vacillation and like people like going from like absolute hope to despair and then back again, and just being convinced that Gandalf was going to betray them all to Sauron.
Yeah, right. Right.
These are the terms, said the messenger, and smiled as he eyed them one by one. So he's just drinking this in.
Yeah, terrible.
The rabble of Gondor and its deluded allies shall withdraw at once beyond the Anduin, first taking oaths never again to assail Sauron the Great in arms. All lands east of the Anduin shall be Sauron's forever solely. West of the Anduin, as far as the Misty Mountains and the Gap of Rohan, shall be tributary to Mordor, and men there shall bear no weapons, but shall have leave to govern their own affairs. But they shall help to rebuild Isengard, which they have wantonly destroyed. And that shall be Sauron's, and there his lieutenant shall dwell, not Saruman, but one more worthy of trust. And it says that looking in the messenger's eyes, they read his thought. He was to be that lieutenant and gather all that remained of the West under his sway. He would be their tyrant, and they his slaves. A modest proposal.
They don't, I mean, does he, I guess I don't know. Does he expect them to take this deal? It's just boasting, right? It's just like,
yeah, it's a highball offer. It's an impossible charge.
Right. And I believe in Gandalf's anguish here. Because I think he does he loves Frodo and fears for Frodo and doesn't want Frodo to be in this condition. But I don't think they could ever expect Mordor to come out with an offer that they could accept. To get Frodo out of that place.
And Gandalf's response is, "This is much a demand for the delivery of one servant, that your master should receive in exchange what he must else fight many a war to gain. Or has the field of Gondor destroyed his hope in war, so that he falls to haggling? And if indeed we rated this prisoner so high, what surety have we that Sauron, the base master of treachery, would keep his part? Where is this prisoner? Let him be brought forth and yielded to us, and then we will consider these demands." So he's playing chess here.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, just show him to us, or better yet, yield him to us,
right?
And then we'll consider these demands."
Yeah.
So he's holding out hope that Frodo is alive.
Right.
It says, "It seemed then to Gandalf, intent, watching him as a man engaged in fencing with the deadly foe, that for the taking of a breath the messenger was at a loss." Yet swiftly he laughed again. So he laughs for the fourth time now. "Do not bandy words in your insolence with the mouth of Sauron," he cried. "Surety you crave? Sauron gives none. If you sue for his clemency, you must first do his bidding. These are his terms. Take them or leave them." And Gandalf says, "These we will take." And suddenly he casts aside his cloak, and a white light shines forth like a sword in that black place. Before his upraised hand, the foul messenger recoiled, because he's a coward. And Gandalf, coming, seized and took from him the tokens, coat, cloak, and sword. "These we will take in the memory of our friend. But as for your terms, we reject them utterly. Get you gone, for your embassy is over and death is near to you. We did not come here to waste words in treating with Sauron, faithless and accursed, still less with one of his slaves. Be gone." And he's not laughing anymore.
Yeah, you can't even talk. Rage filled him and his mouth slavered, and shapeless sounds of fury came strangling from his throat. And then he just sort of screams and runs away. Back to the gate. But the trap is set here, and it seems that it's not as if the host of Mordor just sort of rides out from the gate, like they're all around them in the hills.
They're ready to
here.
go. There was no expectation that they would take this offer. This was an empty offer. Says, but as they went, his soldiers blew their horns in signal long arranged. And even before they came to the gate, Sauron sprang his trap. Drums rolled and fires leapt up. The great doors of the black gate swung back wide. Out of it streamed a great host as swiftly as swirling waters when a sluice is lifted. What a great sentence. Swiftly as swirling waters when a sluice is lifted. That's classic Tolkien alliteration right there.
Totally. It says, the men of the west were trapped, and soon all about the gray mounds where they stood, forces 10 times and more than 10 times their match would ring them in a sea of enemies. Sauron had taken the proffered bait in jaws of steel. So, I mean, they knew they were bait. And it's not a good position to be in, but it's the position that they expected to be in.
Yeah. They order themselves as best they can, and the captains go to the front of this guard where the first bitter assault would come. It says, the wind blew and the trumpets sang, and arrows whined. But the sun, now climbing towards the south, was veiled in the reeks of Mordor, and through a threatening haze it gleamed remote, a sullen red, as if it were the ending of the day, or the end maybe of all the world of light. And out of the gathering murk, the Nazgul came with their cold voices, crying words of death, and then all hope was quenched.
Finally, we come to Pippin, who's kind of been an afterthought, up until now. But he is our witness.
Yeah, our proxy. Yeah.
To all of this. And it's the kind of the way it makes it into the book, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good reminder that if Pippin hadn't been part of this guard of witness, this parlay, that we wouldn't have this chapter. This is from Pippin's recollection. It says, Pippin had bowed, crushed with horror, when he heard Gandalf reject the terms and doom Frodo to the torment of the tower. But he had mastered himself, and now he stood beside Baragond in the front rank of Gondor with Emerhil's men.
I just love that Baragond keeps making his way back into the story. Like, he's right there. He's part of the same company. He's on the front line. But what it says here is such a, tragic thing. It says it seemed best to Pippin to die soon and leave the bitter story of his life, since all was in ruin. It personalizes the kind of resignation of all the captains, right, of this force. But then his line is, I wish Mary was here. Like, I just wish my friend was here at this moment. And it's as he's watching this enemy assault, or, charge toward them in assault. And then he says, and this is so Tolkien. Well, now at any rate, I understand poor Denethor a little better.
Poor Denethor, yeah.
All of a sudden, he has this empathy for Denethor. Like, we could die, Mary and I could have died together.
Yeah.
Instead of dying apart. And that was the choice that Denethor was making for himself and Faramir. At this moment, Pippin kind of understands it. He's like, I get it. I would rather die next to my friend than out here on the, alone on this battlefield, essentially.
He says, well, as he's not here, I hope he'll find an easier end. But now I must do my best.
Yeah.
Says he drew his sword and looked at it. and the intertwining shapes of red and gold, and the flowing characters of Numenor glinted like fire upon the blade. This was made for just such an hour, he thought. If only I could smite that foul messenger with it. Then almost I should draw level with old Mary. Well, I'll smite some of his beastly brood before the end. I wish I could see cool sunlight and green grass again.
That mixture of looking at a weapon, resolve, in the face of this enemy, and then longing for home. Also, I have to imagine is a thought that Tolkien had, as a soldier himself. Like,
Yeah.
God, I wish I could just look at, a green hill again instead of this blasted no man's land. Somewhere in France, right?
Yeah, the Somme.
And that's when the first assault crashes into the front line.
The description of the trolls says taller and broader than men they were, and they were clad only in close-fitting mesh of horny scales, or maybe that was their hideous hide. But they bore round bucklers, huge and black, and wielded heavy hammers in their knotted hands. Reckless, they sprang into the pools and waded across, bellowing as they came. Like a storm, they broke upon the line of the men of Gondor, and beat upon helm and head, and arm and shield, as smiths hewing the hot bending iron. It says, at Pippin's side, Baragon was stunned and overborne, and he fell, and the great troll chief that smote him down bent over him, reaching out a clutching claw, for these fell creatures would bite the throats of those that they threw down. And Pippin stabs upward with his barrow blade of Westerness and pierces through that hide, going deep into the vitals of the troll, and his black blood comes gushing out, and he crashes like a falling rock, burying those beneath him, including Pippin. And blackness and stench crushes him in pain, and his mind falls away into darkness.
So it ends as I thought it would, his thought said, even as it fluttered away. And it laughed a little within him ere it fled. Almost gay it seemed to be, casting off at last all doubt and care and fear. And then, even as it winged away into forgetfulness, it heard voices, and they seemed to be crying in some forgotten world far above. The eagles are coming. The eagles are coming. And Pippin, of course, as we all do, thinks of Bilbo.
He says, but no, that came in his tale long ago. This is my tale, and it is ended now. Goodbye. And it says, and his thought fled far away, and his eyes saw no more. And that's the end of book 5. We'll see you next time for book 6, chapter 1, The Tower of Curathungel.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.